What's up, everybody? My name is Austin Deere, and this is my co-host, Hunter Simons, and we're going to bring you episode 3 of the Around to the Rotunda podcast. Hunter, we're coming off a big week. We had a huge win against Duke this past weekend, and a game that there was supposedly to be a lot of uncertainty with the team. I think things went better than expected. Brennan, I think, started to work out some of the kinks. The defense looked really good, as everybody expected. I think the team even outperformed a little bit.
Yes, sir. Wahoo wah. It's good to see the boys back out on the field, even if it's not exactly the way we'd like to be watching them at Scott Stadium. I'll take it. Anything we can get at this point. Obviously, a lot of opening game rust was there, but there was also a lot of bright spots and a lot of things to be pretty excited about, for this season. So I left the game feeling really optimistic, and, a game in conference where you have to knock off a little bit of rust and you still win by 18 could be worse.
100%. And, after it, for what looked like it was going to be a slow start, especially with the opening kick return by Tavares Kelly, ending up being a fumble and giving Duke the ball on their own on UVA's 25-yard line, setting up a score to start the game. Definitely wasn't what we necessarily had in mind, but the team, I think we definitely saw a lot of growth throughout the game. We saw a lot of players step up that maybe we didn't expect to see. We'll obviously get into that here shortly, but let's go ahead and break down the stat line for the game. Just kind of take a look at how UVA players fared, and based off kind of our predictions, and if we were right, we were wrong. This will kind of give us a good idea of how well did the stat line reflect the score that ended up at the end of the game. So Brennan Armstrong, first of all, it was a very up and down day for him. He finished the day 24 for 45 with 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The 2 touchdowns came during the fourth quarter, led 2 great drives. Before that, a lot of it seemed very rushed. He seemed kind of uncomfortable in the pocket. He definitely seemed to have a lot more comfort when he was rolling outside the pocket and got to move a little bit. I think that we could possibly see that, change with the offensive mindset going forward. But overall, I think as the game went on, he kind of started to find himself a little bit. Now, given he didn't get a lot of help from the wide receiving corps at the time, there was a couple of drops, but there was also a couple wayward passes that, probably shouldn't have been made. But I just kind of chalked it up to inexperience. And, overall, I think for the first game starting under this offense, I think he definitely showed a lot of promise, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely agree. It was a topsy-turvy game. You could put it that way, at least. I think 2 interesting things to me right off the bat, like 45 pass attempts. That's actually more than Bryce Perkins ever had in his UVA career in a single game, I think that was a little surprising to me. Like, when I heard that, I kind of just assumed that at some point Bryce threw the ball for a little bit more. It didn't feel like we were over relying on the passing game, but that's something that stuck out to me. And then, another thing, kind of talking about like what actually got Brennan in the flow. I've heard a couple people talk about this that I follow and listen to podcasts for UVA football, and I totally agree with this opinion, is that it kind of took until he got hit a time or two when he was running to like start to get into the game. Like, and I mentioned it in the opening podcast, or maybe it was last week's podcast, when I was talking about Brennan Armstrong and how he's more of that fiery type of player. And I could totally see him being the type that, like, if you lay him out on one play, like, you better watch your back the next play, because he might just run it right down your throat. So I think we got a little bit of glimpse of that. For
sure. And, he's a hard runner. And I think that was something that we definitely saw. I mean, he had 10 carries for, I think, just over 40 yards, and ended up having a touchdown as well at the goal line. So we definitely saw a lot from him on that side of things, outside of the passing game. So it really opened up some opportunities for him that I think we saw some glimpses of what Bryce was able to do. And I think you mentioned as well, Brennan, his arm was almost it's almost as good as what we saw from like Kurt Benkert back in the day. when he played a couple of years ago. He definitely shows a lot of skill when it comes to accuracy and being able to throw a good dart to a receiver, that needs a quick pass on a quick route. There's a lot of good things that I saw, and it definitely showed a lot of improvement as the game went on. But so as far as Brennan goes, I think there's a lot of room for growth there. I think we saw a lot, especially as the game went on. And, I'm excited to see what the rest of the season is going to look like. I think he'll come out a lot sharper with the games going forward. And, it'll be interesting to see. As far as the rushing attack goes, Wayne Talapapa really carried the majority of the load with 16 carries. He had 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. He averaged almost 6 yards per carry. And I think that's honestly a testament to the growth of the offensive line as well. I mean, these guys were pushing Duke around. We were expecting Duke's defensive line to maybe be a factor, but they weren't at all. I don't think they hardly got to Brennan. And the running game was really opened up for a lot of good opportunities. Like we said, Brennan was able to get 10 rushes in for just over 40 yards. So that's definitely something to be excited about. And if that can continue, man, that's going to take a lot of pressure off of Brennan, especially with being a new quarterback and everything. And he's not going to feel like he has to force the ball a lot. And, UVA talked about it. They wanted to put more emphasis on the running game, and they definitely showed it.
Yeah, I mean, I was super impressed with Wayne for a variety of reasons. The 2 biggest things that come to mind, his leg strength is unbelievable. That second, I think it was the second touchdown. Yeah, it was. The one, I think we were on the 10-yard line, and it was one of those classic plays where he just punches it up the gut and runs into a wall of players like 3 yards forward. The entire
offensive line pushed him like 5 yards forward.
He carried like 7 Duke players on his back into the end zone, another 5 or 6 yards. And the commentators could not stop talking about the fact that Wayne lives in Hawaii and did all of these workouts on the beach that got his legs really, really strong. And you know what? Honestly, I believe it, because that was unbelievable to me. And then another thing I think he really showed this year that was new to his game. Like, that's something that he showed a bit last year. I think he might be even stronger, but something that looked new this year was he was making some cuts, and he was making some dudes like whiff on tackles. And, he's always been super decisive with the way he runs, but seeing him in the open field make safeties like grasping for air was pretty exciting. And I think he's showing a little bit more burst in his step. So I think it's, it's promising. We'll see how it translates against a better defense. But I think, Duke's no slouch, and he looked like a legit ACC running back in that game. And, teams are going to, at the very minimum, have to at least respect the run now with him and Shane Simpson, who I think we're about to go into as well.
For sure. And, speaking of Shane Simpson, he had 8 carries for 36 yards, which is respectable in his own right. First ACC game under his belt. And, I was definitely impressed with how hard he ran. And he definitely shows, I think, a lot of speed out of the backfield.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as we kind of mentioned in the last podcast when we were breaking down the depth chart, he was also a threat coming out of the backfield. I think he had 2 receptions for 11 yards is what I think he told me. But he looks like a guy that just adds a couple different factors to our offense that, it's just something different. And having that 1-2 punch of him and Talapapa this year, if we truly have a little bit more of a running back by committee approach, I think that would be super advantageous to our team.
For sure, 100%. And, now we'll go into the receiving core, which I think there was a lot of questions going into the first game is, how are we going to replace Joe Reed? How are we going to replace Hasise Dubois? Who was really going to step in and fill that role? And I think everybody expected, it was going to be Terrell Jannett. Jannett was the one that everybody was talking about was going to be the guy that was going to really break out this year. And Jannett didn't really have his best day. But being completely honest, he wasn't good this past week. He only had 4 receptions for, I think, 30-some yards. And, it wasn't – he had a couple drops. It definitely wasn't what I expected out of him. But, the one guy that really, I think wowed everybody was Lavelle Davis Jr., true freshman, I think 6'6", 6'7". I mean, he's just a big dude. I mean, the size of his hands are crazy. They can just easily grip a football and really made for 2 great opportunities in the end zone. Both of Brennan's passing touchdowns went to Lavelle Davis. And, there was the perfect throw of where Lavelle ran a fade route into the corner of the end zone, and Brennan just threw it up there for him to go and get. I mean, the defender didn't stand a chance. It was perfect. And, it's just something that I think is going to really cause a lot of problems for the next couple of years for defenders. When you have somebody of that height and that much athletic ability, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, my gosh, yes. And, I think on the last podcast, I kind of gave a little bit of a tip saying, hey, this guy is going to be a factor in the offense this year. Even I didn't expect this. I thought it'd be more goal line situation. This guy was on the field like as many snaps as Terrell Jana, it felt like. He's not listed as a starter, but the number of targets that he had and the amount of time he was on the field, I would essentially say he was a starter for us. Obviously, like, I think enough people have said enough already about Lavelle Davis. It's like super impressive. The big thing for him that Broncos mentioned, and he's even mentioned himself, is like, hey, this is just the beginning. Like, this is game one of my career. It's all about how you follow up one great game. Like, it's all about game two and how you can continue to prove yourself when you're on the other team's scouting report now. So, I almost can kind of anticipate, and, we'll get into the game preview about Clemson here in a little bit, but I kind of see where Clemson might now set up to defend Lavelle Davis and maybe double him and stuff like that. And I could see actually Jana getting more opportunities because of that, just due to the fact that I think Jana, for the first time in his career, was the number one receiver for UVA and had a lot of added focus around him from their defensive scheme. And that's probably part of what caused him to have a little bit of a slow start. This upcoming week, they're going to have to respect Lavelle Davis, and hopefully it doesn't really matter how much they respect him and he can just dominate anyways. But I think we can get into that a little bit later.
For sure. And so I think, with Lavelle Davis and, how much hype he had around him after that week, I think, people kind of forgot about, Billy Kemp. He was reliable as he was last year, 7 catches for 70 yards. I mean, he filled the slot role perfectly, and he did what he was supposed to do. And I think I think if he can continue to produce in that way every year, I mean, Dabo Swinney was already commenting about him in his pressers leading up to the game this week that he's a good slot receiver, and he's somebody that he gave Clemson a little bit of issues in the ACC Championship game last year with Joe Reed being out. Billy was targeted a lot. So it'll be really interesting to see, what kind of game plan that Clemson's going to have for him, what kind of game plan that UVA is going to have for him, especially now with Lavelle Davis being in the mix. Clemson's going to have to figure out, who are we going to prioritize and make them beat us. So it'll be really interesting to see. But, I think Billy Kemp wasn't talked about enough, with Lavelle Davis's big day. And, he just did what he was supposed to do.
I mean, the play of Billy Kemp is absolutely essential to the way our offense moves the ball. We thrive so much on the short passing game, and Billy Kemp, no matter who the opponent is, he even showed it in the ACC Championship game, like you said, last year. If it's a 5-yard route, he's so slippery, he's going to get a little bit of separation. And he does some exciting stuff after the catch too. That 70 yards, obviously he averaged 10 yards per reception, but it was definitely a mix of like 3-yard reception, 16-yard reception. So, you see him used in a variety of ways. And I think, again, like we touched on this last week, I said I would not be shocked at all if Billy Kemp led the team in receptions, and I'm going to really stick by that now. I think they use him in a really similar way to how they used Joe Reed last year and how we used Zacchaeus for 4 years before that. You have this guy that's just got this athletic ability, and he's dangerous with the ball in his hand. So we're going to try to find him as much as we can as we're moving up the field. So I think that's a really good sign. And I think that's, as I've kind of mentioned before, it's going to be essential to our offense being successful.
100%. I definitely agree. And, I think we have to give credit to the offensive line, which I already did when talking about the running game. But I think it's just worth noting how great they were. Brennan had time in the pocket, and the running game really, really succeeded. And so I think it's just a testament as to what we were expecting with the growth of that offensive line and how well Garrett Tujague has done with them. And, it's going to be exciting to see how they perform the rest of the year, especially going up against a team like Clemson and see how they handle that defensive front. But, talking about our own defense, it's –
before you get to defense, sorry. We got to give the quick plug to our man, Tony Poljan, because he looks special too, man.
Yeah, so Tony Poljan, the transfer from Central Michigan.
There were quite a few where he almost broke it, man. They had some shoestring tackles on this guy. I can just see it, can just envision it off of this. This man's going to have a bunch of big gains over the middle.
And
he catches the ball, and he's on the turn within a half second, and he's running full speed. It's impressive.
For sure. I mean, that's seriously – I mean, it's going to cause some problems, especially when you have him who could be running out in the flats and, then you have, Lavelle Davis on the left or right side. I mean, you got 2 6'7" guys out there that you have to deal with. I mean, that's for any sort of defenders. I mean, that's going to be a problem. There's going to be a lot of mismatches there, and I think it's going to create some serious opportunities, especially when Brennan finally finds his footing and whatnot. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that offense really starts to click. And Tony Poljan was talking about, how he spent, I think 3 years with Central Michigan, and he's only been with UVA for 3 months, and he feels like he's been here for years. And I think that's just such a testament to the culture that they're building at that program. And, while you're starting to see guys want to come to Charlottesville.
Yeah, you're going to have 2 always open guys, at least, at 6'7". When in doubt, just chuck it up to the 6'7" dude. I think that it's not the worst strategy.
Yeah.
Hey, and the man can block.
For sure. I mean, I think
he showed that.
It's another help with the run game. I mean, it's there, and he was really great with pass protection as well.
For sure.
But yeah. So no, definitely. Thank you for reminding me on Tony Poljan. I totally forgot, and glad we were able to give him the credit where credit was due. And but like I said, moving on to the defense, gosh, they've lived up to every expectation that we set for them. A couple, obviously, they gave up 20 points, but I'm going to chalk that straight up to the fact that we had some turnovers on our end ourselves, and Duke just ended up with good field position. There's just not a whole lot you can do about it in those situations. But, I mean, 7 turnovers on the day. That's insane. 5 interceptions, 2 by Brenton Nelson alone, and then, you had Nick Grant, Joey Blunt, and D'Angelo Amos all contribute to that as well, and then 2 forced fumbles. I mean, this defense was a problem. It was an absolute problem. Zane Zandier and Nick Jackson were all over the field. Zandier had 15 tackles and 2 tackles for loss, and Nick Jackson had 12 tackles and 1 tackle for loss. I mean, it's just exactly what you expected from that linebacking group too. I mean, I
gotta say, Nick Jackson was even better than I expected. I mean, and I think even Bronco mentioned that on the coach's corner with Dave Kane. He said, we were a little surprised just how good he really was, which, I mean, it's kind of cool because, the guy was dominant. And I think he graded out the highest in, Pro Football Focus from UVA players on the day. And there's one play in particular I remember, if I'm comparing it with last year. So think back to, the Orange Bowl last year. Nick Jackson has to slot in and start for Jordan Mack, and P. Ryan, the running back for Florida, just had a field day in the opening quarter with Nick Jackson having missed tackles along the way. There was one play when Duke, basically the running back, got the ball and he had a hole, and he had a full head of steam running 2 or 3 yards, and Nick Jackson literally uplifted this guy and planted him on his butt at the line of scrimmage. And I literally just watched a human being lift up another large human being and just throw him on the ground. I mean, and this guy's only a sophomore. I mean, the talent is there. He's going to be really special. We can already just see it. This is a huge year for him. I'm super excited.
100%. And, it's just, I think it's hard to really single out just one person. Obviously those 2 guys had big days, but I mean, the entire defense as a whole was fantastic. The entire front 7 was good with getting to the quarterback, and obviously the secondary held up on their end of the bargain, and it was just they really caused a lot of problems to the point where Cutcliffe had to take Chase Bryce out the game, who was a Clemson transfer. That says a lot about what this defense is able to do. Obviously, Duke is not nearly up to the caliber that Clemson is, but somebody that had the skill set to go and play at a school such as that. So it was really cool to see. I think they're only going to get better going forward, and that's what's scary about it.
For sure. And I think like the very small things, if you want to get nitpicky, is they gave up a couple big plays, especially over the middle. I think there might have been some small miscommunications between linebackers and the safeties in terms of like who's following a guy. And I think a little bit of that comes with the territory of our like kind of complicated defensive scheme. But those are all things I think you can fix. You watch some film, you get in the film room, try to learn. I think you can kind of clean those things up. But if we don't, Clemson absolutely will expose it really quickly. So hopefully we can clean that part up. But I mean, just a testament to like, the will of this defense being tested on the very first like minute of the game when we fumble the ball inside our own 20 on the opening kickoff and have to essentially have a goal line stand to hold them to a field goal. I think kind of set the tone for this whole season of just, hey, we might bend a little bit, but we'll never break, and we will always give our offense a chance to win the game. So I totally saw that from them, and I expect that to continue.
100%. And, I think just the amount of adversity that was overcome in this game. I mean, yes, we took a lead into halftime. It was 17-10 at half, and, Duke came out and scored 10 points to take the lead. And, then it was game over from there. Brendan Armstrong being able to lead the offense the way he did showed more promise to me than anything, just because he didn't let the way that game was started define how it was going to end. He was a fighter all the way until the end, and it showed. And we ended up slamming the door right on Duke, and it was just a good end to the game, considering how it started. And
sure.
I think there's a lot of bright spots with this team, and I really think it's only going to get better as time goes on.
For sure. And I think it shows too just the mentality and how far we've come as a program, and honestly as an athletic department. Just like how it is. We're all UVA fans. Like you get that feeling in a game when like we've had a lead and we lose it, and it's like, oh God, here we go. But
for sure.
With the basketball team, like, making that comeback for the national championship, and, the carryover into football last year with like having a back and forth game with Virginia Tech that we actually end up coming out on top of. I think that really just gives us as fans the faith, but more importantly, the players themselves the faith that, hey, until that clock reads 0, like we've got a shot. So I think it's awesome to see just the mentality shift so much. But yeah, do we want to get into how we had projected this game ahead of time and see how we stacked up? I think each week Austin and I are planning to kind of continue to give you guys our predictions based on the preseason prediction, maybe make any adjustments as we see needed, and then sort of keep a running tally and see like how we perform. So I can start. I had projected this game to be 31-20 UVA win. It's pretty close. We ended up winning 38-20, so obviously a little bit more favorable than I'd predicted, but kind of similar to how I expected the game to go in terms of a little bit of sloppiness on offense and defense, but overall just being the better team, having the faith that if we come out and just execute, even if it's like a B- game, we should still win. And I think that's kind of exactly what happened. So
exactly,
kudos to me.
Exactly. And I had it at 28-17. So a little close, but yours was definitely more on the money than mine was. But I think I didn't expect. I guess I wasn't expecting 38 points being put up in the first game with a brand new quarterback. So I'll chalk that up, and I'll be very happy taking the under on that, and have my team pleasantly surprise me. So I think like you pointed, I think there's a lot to be happy about. The offense really rolled towards the end of that game, and it's.
For sure.
I think we did overall pretty well with the score prediction there. The game went exactly how we expected it. It was going to be sloppy at first, and the game was going to get better as it went on, and it did.
won't say I expected a fumble on the opening kickoff, but
No,
I
neither do
probably
I.
should have. I
I
probably
thought
should
we
have.
were going to be in for a long season.
So
But
let's turn back. One last thing to last episode before we move on to the Clemson preview. I think we can review like what I had as the keys to victory, and I'll try to just give a quick little rundown of how I think we stacked up. Sneak peek, we did pretty dang good on checking all the boxes.
sure.
I'll run through them one at a time, just to try to do real quick. So the first one, number one that I had was win the turnover battle. Yeah, we won. Even with 3 turnovers of our own, we still had a +4 turnover margin. As Austin mentioned earlier, seven total turnovers, 5 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, and 1 muffed punt fumble. I think you obviously can point to that and say, I think that was the single most important thing to us winning the game was just the field position that we gained, the opportunities, the momentum, all of that comes with the turnovers. We really turned that into points and, also limited them from scoring at the same time.
I mean, it literally defined the game, to be honest with you. It really helped keep us in it and I think it really gave the offense the feeling that, hey, we have a chance to win here. And I think it just led to us shutting the door.
No doubt. And when your defense is just giving you the ball right back every single time, as an offense, you have that little bit of pressure, but I think it's a good pressure where it's like, hey, look at how the defense is balling out. Like we gotta do this. We gotta repay them for like what they're doing for us as an offense. So I think eventually as things started clicking, we really started to take advantage of that. Second thing I had was to maintain drives on offense. And I think that when we looked good offensively, this was 100% part of it. There was no like huge home run plays. Like we didn't score on any 40, 50-yard touchdowns. Like everything was a drive that was capped off by a nice touchdown, other than like I think the one time we got a turnover on their 10-yard line off of a fumble. Pretty much every scoring drive was, an actual drive. We early on in the first quarter and the third quarter, you saw plenty of 3 and outs that stalled our offense. And that's when we were losing the game, or when they were gaining momentum against us. So I think it proved to be true that when we did maintain drives, that really separated us from them. So hopefully that's something. I think this will be, again, something really important against Clemson is got to just, can't get too far behind the chains. You got to be incrementally gaining yards each play. Obviously that's the point of the game, but just being realistic, if we can gain 4 or 5 yards of play against Clemson, we'll be much better off than if we're moving backwards. The third thing that I had mentioned was dominating the trenches. I think we 100% did this. We limited Duke's talented defensive line with 2, all ACC type defensive ends, and Victor DiMakeji and Chris Rump. We limited them to just 1 sack, and I think it took all the way until the fourth quarter. We ran for 188 yards. I don't remember the last time we ran for 188 yards. If we did, it was probably against someone that was not very good, not an ACC team. So just seeing that, obviously a big part of it, you give credit to the running backs for sure, but the offensive line played a massive role in that as well. And then on the defensive side of the ball, we got after the quarterback, we got 5 sacks, which helped probably to force the turnovers in terms of quarterback hurries, things like that. And of those 5 sacks, 2.5 were actually from our defensive line, which is pretty cool because most of the time, all of our sacks come from the linebackers. So seeing Juwan Briggs get a sack, I think Bernie got a sack, and then Jameer Carter, the true freshman, got a half sack. Which was pretty cool to see as well. So that's another place where I'd say we definitely ticked that box. And then the final thing I had as the fourth most important was to control the field position. And this one, I calculated it out because I couldn't find a stat anywhere. We won the starting field position by 0.3 yards. So I would say it was overall relative non-factor, considering both teams turned the ball over and really not ideal places on the field and gave some really short fields to the other team. This kind of ended up being a cancel out between the two teams, but I think overall when you hit 3 of the 4 boxes like really strongly, you're going to be in good shape. So
sure,
good to see that.
So great week, coming off of winning against Duke. Like I said, I fully expected the win here in the last podcast. I wasn't expecting much from Duke, and I think if this is a team that had a tune-up game before we stepped in here, I think the score honestly could have been a whole lot worse, in my personal opinion. But I think as far as tune-up games in the ACC goes, this was exactly what we needed, because now we have the rematch. We went to Charlotte last year in our first ever ACC Championship game and got absolutely drubbed by the Clemson Tigers, who would end up going on to the college football playoff. This is a team that is very well coached. They have a ridiculous amount of talent under Dabo Swinney, and I'm not really expecting too much different this year. I definitely expect a little bit better from us, especially on the defensive side of the ball, considering that we don't have as many injuries as we did last year. I think we definitely have a healthier defense, and I'm hoping that they will be able to find a way to slow this offense down a little bit. Just some players to watch as far as Clemson goes. Trevor Lawrence, he's, the next Tom Brady, next Peyton Manning, the next great quarterback in the NFL that everybody's talking about. Probably going to be the number 1 pick in the draft coming up. He's everything that you could ask for. I mean, his season's off to a great start. He's 30 for 37. I mean, Lord, he's thrown 7 incomplete passes, and for 519 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, hasn't thrown an interception. The dude just can control the field, and it's really just amazing to watch the passes that he can throw to his receivers. Even when they may seem like they're not open, he finds a way to make them open, and they're able to go get the ball. And it's just it's a real testament to how good this kid's arm is.
Let's be honest too. Like, how many quarters do you think he's actually played this season in the 2 games they played?
So he's played a total of 5 in 2 games. He played through the third quarter against Wake Forest, and he didn't even play past halftime against the Citadel.
They had their backup in pretty early in the second quarter against the Citadel, which is
okay. Well, then there you go. Yeah, all I saw was there was nothing in relation to him for the second half of the game. I quite frankly, I didn't sit down and watch Clemson versus the Citadel. It wasn't on my top of to-do list. But no surprises as to what he has to offer. I mean, obviously, Clemson is on a whole nother level compared to the rest of the ACC for the most part. Obviously the top tier.
Most of the country too.
Yes, and most of the country. He leads the helm. Everything goes through Trevor Lawrence, but also they have their star running back Travis Etienne, who has 25 carries and 175 yards so far. That's pretty much averaging like 6 yards a carry. He has 1 touchdown on the year, which I'm probably expecting him to have more, but overall, he's still a very respectable running back. I mean, he runs with power, he runs with speed. He has every single skill set that you would want in a complete running back, and he definitely has that to offer.
Yeah, I can't believe he's still in college. Like, I can't believe that guy didn't go to the NFL last year.
100%.
He's actually the 2-time reigning ACC Player of the Year over Trevor Lawrence.
It's pretty crazy.
That's a testament to how good he's been.
Considering the years that Trevor Lawrence has, how do you pick that? That's
I'm pretty sure on his career, I'm pretty sure he averages like 8 yards a carry, which is just unbelievable. And he tore us apart last year, obviously. It helps when you have Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, and they have to respect not only him throwing the ball, but also Trevor Lawrence can run the ball as well. Like, really underrated part of his game. Travis Etienne just being that, if he sees a hole, he's going to not only hit it, he's going to gain 60, 70 yards if it's open. Like, he's got that breakaway speed in addition to being a good runner between the tackles as well. So they just hit you from all angles. Let's just be honest. They've got players all over the field. They've got a great offensive line.
For sure.
We can go on for days about their team.
Exactly. And their two main wide receiver threats are Amari Rogers and Frank Ladson Jr. It was kind of hard to decide, who are their big guys. I read up a little bit about them. Or these were the two that they kind of talked about at the beginning before the season started in some of the previews. These are going to be the two to kind of look out for. Amari Rogers has 6 receptions for 134 yards and a touchdown, and then Fred Glasson Jr. has 4 receptions for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think definitely 2 what you would consider deep ball threats, considering the number of receptions they have with yardage involved. Definitely something to really look out for the 2 of them. Going on to the defensive side of the ball, they lost a lot. They had your star linebacker Isaiah Simmons, they had Kayvon Wallace, AJ Terrell, Tanner Muse, all gone this year, and so they're kind of looking to a little bit of a younger defense this year. Tyler Davis and Miles Pinkey, they're going to carry the load up front on the defensive line, which is they've kind of been made a name for themselves as one of the best front duos in all of college football. So that's really kind of, I think, where that front defensive line is where that defense really shines this year, I think. Especially with a lot of kind of uncertainty in the linebacking group in the secondary, just because they have so much to replace, which, we talk about how, it could be a problem for them, but, they're replacing them with 4- and 5-star recruits that are, coming in ready to play from day one. So, it's kind of hard to determine who's going to be the standout player this year for them on defense.
Yeah. I mean, for Clemson and on offense and defense alike, when they lose one, they've got another guy sitting there ready to go that the previous season probably got to play in 10 or 11 games because they blow out everybody. So I fully expect that whoever they have to replace, the big names that they lost from last season, they might not be quite the same individual talent, but they're going to fit right in to what Clemson's scheme is. And, they have great coaches over there in addition to Dabo Sweeney. Obviously, Brent Venables as their defensive coordinator is like the most highly sought after assistant in the country and one of the most highly paid coaches in the country, period. Doesn't matter if he's assistant or head coach, he makes a lot of money. And there's a reason he does. His defense is always super stout. I remember going into last year's ACC Championship game, they were giving up like 10.4 points per game on the season, which is just stupid. Like, come on. Like that is actually unbelievable. And I think it's worth calling out 2 true freshmen that they also are adding on the defensive line that have already kind of factored in and been actually shown some potential already is Miles Murphy and Brian Brzee. Brian Brzee was the number 1 rated recruit in the country coming out of high school last year, and he actually hasn't even been the star freshman so far. It's been the Miles Murphy guy, but he's also been really good as well. So like we said, they just reload with 4 and 5 stars in every single position, and that's just kind of the way Clemson rolls. Maybe we can be there one day.
One day, it's definitely something not gonna be overnight. But I think as far as how we match up with this team, I think it's kind of hard to tell because Clemson's on such a higher level than everybody else, and I think there's still a little bit. Yes, we like some things that we saw on the offensive side of the ball in the first game, but you're still playing Clemson. This is going to be a much bigger bulldog than when facing somebody like Duke. I don't really see us being competitive in this game, especially when you have to go into Death Valley, which also happens to be a stadium that has fans in it. It's still going to be a tough atmosphere to play, and it's one of the best atmospheres in all of college football. And I'm expecting hopefully some better performance out of our defense. I would really like to not have a 60 spot hung on us again this year, which I don't see that happening. I think I would imagine us giving up maybe 40 some points is what I'm going to realistically guess that at. But besides that, I think my hope is that the offense will be able to move the football a little bit. Hopefully we'll bring out a few things maybe with a little bit more up tempo style that Robert and I is trying to put together now, and it'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah, and just thinking about it schematically, like what I think we could do to like maybe generate some success. And also the bar for success in this game is obviously completely different than the average game. But, I think that what we can do is, we have so much talent in our front seven, and we have so much length. And that's something that they don't, even when they're playing the Ohio States and the LSUs of the world, like, they're not seeing Charles Snowden and Noah Taylor. Like, these guys are seriously like physical freaks. Bronco brings them in for a reason because it does make our defense unique. And Dabo even called it out in his like pregame presser this week, was that, hey, UVA's got some guys on the edge that like kind of just cave you in because they have so much size. And I think if we can set the edge and kind of limit big plays coming out of the backfield and sort of force them to throw, that's kind of, as weird as that sounds with Trevor Lawrence as the quarterback. I
Forcing
think that's
Trevor
like,
Lawrence to throw. What a crazy thought.
I know, but if we can make it predictable and put a seal over the top where they cannot score on massive plays over the top, they have to have, everything has to be underneath, and then they have to beat us to get into the end zone, essentially. I think if we can essentially scheme a way to make that happen, we stand a chance to at least be respectful. It really is that bend but don't break mentality, and the more we can do to like try to slow them down and just give ourselves a chance, I think the better off we'll be. I think offensively, I actually trust us to come up with a game plan that can, I'm not saying we're going to go put up a bunch of points on them, but I think we can at least like score a couple touchdowns, maybe get a field goal or two as well. I don't expect us to go toe to toe with them at all, but I do think like, it'd be super promising to see us actually move the ball a little bit and put together some drives that actually look cohesive and aren't just based on like, one really big play. Like, as we kind of mentioned, it'd be really nice to put some real drives together.
For sure. So, then we'll head into our last segment of the night. We have our, obviously, keys to victory from you, Hunter. And, This is more of a keys to keep it somewhat respectable, I think, for a game like this. But, hey, anything can happen. ESPN gives us a 2.8% chance of winning this game. So we'll hang on to that 2.8% and hope to God that maybe it will come true. Maybe not this day, but, in the future down the road. But, Hunter, what do you see UVA needing to do to really, make Clemson think a little bit out on the field there this week?
The first thing that I have was the biggest thing. I actually went back and rewatched a decent bit of the game from last year, and I remember it pretty well from when we were there together. The thing that killed us, just absolutely like killed any momentum we ever had at all in that game, was the big play factor, the home run hits from Clemson. You kind of mentioned their wide receivers are guys that catch the ball going downfield. They both average like between 15 and 20 yards per reception. And a lot of that comes from super long touchdown passes. We did not fare much better than anyone else last year in that regard against Clemson. But a lot of it wasn't actually getting beat over the top. It was guys making catches and us having candidly piss poor tackling and just not bringing guys down in the open field. So I think, as I kind of mentioned, if we're able to put a seal over the top and make them play underneath us, I feel better with the health of our secondary this year and some of the size that guys like Joey Blunt and Britton Nelson and Devontae Cross, like the size that they've been able to put on in the offseason. I feel better about their tackling ability. And a lot of them have mentioned too, like over this week, and since, they even mentioned it last year after the Florida game, was that they all learned a lot from the Clemson game last year, and they understand now what that level looks like. And you did see it translate that they were better prepared in that regard for the Florida game. So I think if they can translate a lot of that stuff to, how they played against Florida and, honestly do a little bit better, then I think our defense stands a chance to at least make the game respectable, make Clemson have to earn it. That's the big thing for me, is that I just want Clemson to have to actually come out here and put in like a full effort to to run the score up against us. I don't want it to just be like really natural like it was last year. So that's the big thing, number one. Number two, from the offensive side of the ball, I think it's going to be super important to establish the run. If they can make our offense one-dimensional in any way, and, you know, the more likely being that we start throwing the ball because we're behind, I think it could end up really ugly and there could be a lot of turnovers. So if we're able to, you know, build off of what we did against Duke and establish the run, have some good offensive line play, see Wayne, you know, continue to progress. I think that'll really take a lot of pressure off of Brennan to make plays with his arm. And it could also, like, you know, open up some play action as well. And then another thing with that as well is you kind of can keep the clock running. And I think if UVA, you know, I wrote all of this with the miracle situation of UVA pulling off an upset. I think one thing that would be awesome, or one thing that would be essential to making that happen, is shortening the game as much as possible, keeping them off the field and having our time of possession just completely outweigh theirs. And, you know, one of the best ways to do that is to establish the run and stay in bounds. So that's just the second thing that I see there. And then the last piece, take our chances. And this comes in both the play of our actual players and also our decision-making from our coaches. So one thing that really pissed me off last year, that as I watched back when I was rewatching the Clemson game from the ACC Championship last year, was, you know, the first drive, we went all the way down the field and threw an interception in the end zone. That sucks, obviously, but it was nice to see us move the ball down the field. They get the ball, they score. We get the ball, we drive all the way down the field again, have a nice touchdown pass as he's Dubois, tie it up 7-7. They go right down the field and score, make it 14-7. We get the ball again, start moving it pretty well, get inside their half of the field, and end up with a 4th and 3 on like their 39-yard line or something like that. And we send out the punt unit. And I remember at that moment in time just thinking, like, why? Like, what is the point? You're going to have to score to stay in this game, like, very clearly. So I think, you know, from a coaching standpoint, if we get in those situations, like, what do we have to lose? Like, seriously, just go for it. Like, take chances. They're going to get the ball back and probably go right down the field regardless of where they get the ball from. So why not take a chance? So I think that's something that hopefully the coaching staff has learned. And, you know, from our players' point of view, I hope they all do have the mentality of like, hey, let's make, you know, we have this mantra within our own program of earn, not given. Like, not to be cheesy, but like they need to go out and earn this game too. You know, we can't just roll up and respect them so much that we just kind of sit there in awe, like when they're playing. Like, no, we've got some, like, a talented team too, and we've got some guys that are going to go play in the NFL as well. Like, we can take it to them. So I think if our guys have that mentality, and as well as our coaches, we'll, you know, if we can accomplish all three of those things, I think we'll be in a place where we could potentially have some eyebrows raised and some hearts beating a little bit faster in Clemson going into the fourth quarter than they're used to in ACC play. But it will
100%.
take a huge lift and a huge effort from everybody on our team. So,
and I like that last comment that you made about, you know, things being are not given, and, you know, putting together a game that'll make things seem respectable, and, you know, raise some eyebrows a little bit, you know, towards our team. Because I think, you know, one thing I think they mentioned last year was, you know, it was more of a, oh yeah, we're just happy to be here kind of thing. And now I feel like we've taken that next step forward of, we're happy to be here, but we're also here to win. And I don't think it's going to be, oh, wow, it's Clemson. Like, you know, that's so cool. Like, I can't believe I'm playing Clemson. Like, you know, playing future, you know, probably future Hall of Famer Trevor Lawrence. Like, you know, like, that's like, this is crazy. Like, no, it's going to be, Zane Zandier is going to be walking out on the field with kill under his eyes saying, I'm going to destroy these dudes today. And, you know, I think it's just going to be that kind of mentality across the board for everyone. I think that it's not oh, we're happy to be here mentality anymore. I think that they know that they belong in a sense. You know, I'm not saying that they're in the same tier as Clemson, because that would just be idiotic. But they know that they both belong in their own retrospect, that they can compete if they put their mind to it, to the best that they can.
For sure.
And so I think we'll see a lot of physicality. I'm just hoping smart plays and just a well thought out game from the coaching staff as far as play calling goes. Like you said, taking chances, because I definitely think you go for it. Against the number one team in the country, you freaking go for it. Take every chance you can to try and pull off a win. Because that's the game that everybody will be talking about for the rest of the year if you do. And so
and
that's something to definitely think about.
And a huge component of it is just belief and believing. And you're never going to beat Clemson without believing that you can beat them. Like, seriously, you're not going to just show up and get lucky and beat Clemson. Like, that's never, ever going to happen to any team in college football. Like, they're too dang good for that. Like, you have to go out there and believe it and believe in yourself. And I think, while it's like funny to sit here and kind of say like, all right, like what's realistically going to be the score? Like, you know what? These guys have earned our respect as players on our team. So like, let's give them some faith so that they can translate that out on the field as well.
For sure. And speaking about the score to end it all, Hunter, you had predicted this game to be a 41-17 loss. Are you sticking to that? Are you wanting to make any changes? What are you thinking as far as the final score goes?
So although my little pep talk right there just got me so pumped up, and this is going to be contradictory, I think that like that's still a pretty fair score line, 41-17, and I wouldn't even be that mad at that score line. Let me do quick math in my head. I think that would cover the spread of 28 points. No. Yeah.
No. Yeah, it actually would. Yeah,
that's a 24-point game. That would cover the spread of 28 points. So I'm kind of in that territory of like, if we cover the spread, I'll feel pretty good.
Sure.
And there's a lot of money going on Clemson in this game. So if we could prove some people wrong, that'd be nice. But 41-17, I think I will give this just as a fun little side thing. That's not my official prediction. But if, quote unquote, if we were to somehow pull off the win, I think the score would be something along the lines of like 35-31. I think it would be not low scoring, but it would be a bit more of a grind, and we'd have to really limit their offense. But again, that's fairy tale land that hopefully one day we can live in.
Absolutely. And I had it at 42-10. Quite frankly, I don't see that changing. Clemson's defense is young, but our offense still has a long ways to go, I think, and it's definitely not going to get any easier against this team. So I'm going to hold true to my score prediction as well. Like I said, I just hope that we can avoid the 60 spot being put up on us again this year, which I definitely don't see that happening. But I definitely think my hope is that things will stay respectable, to say the least. But that's all we have for you.
Sorry, I was going to say, I don't want to see Dabo Sweeney's son or Kirk Herbstreit's sons on the field.
Oh, no,
because that's when it's
not.
gotten really ugly.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. Well, that's all we have for you guys today. And as always, we appreciate you taking the time to listen. And please give us a follow on our Twitter page at @ATR_pod. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can follow us at our on Spotify, Anchor. We're all over the place. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can find it anywhere. So please give us a follow, and we hope that you guys enjoy your game day Saturday, and go Hoos.
Go Hoos.